Welcome to another episode of Habits for Health. Today, we're going to dive into what you can do to build muscle, and especially focused on doing exercises in the gym, as well as maybe a few supplements and a few other practices that can enhance your muscle building over time. And yeah, first of all, love to hear from you, Wouter, your experience in the gym, how long you've been doing it, and get kind of into it.
All right. So thank you for your introduction, Andreas. I've been lifting for quite a while. I joined a gym 19 years ago, but back then I could not even lift a barbell if I wanted to. And it took me a few years before I kind of get a grip on lifting and started lifting a few days a week rather than just once a month. And I pretty much went from a chubby teenager to a healthy person in his 30s. And yeah, I've made some solid strength gains and I've improved my physique quite a bit. Um, and today I'd like to discuss a few rules that I like to stick to in the gym that have really helped me improve my muscle mass. And maybe I can discuss a few of these with you if you have any questions about it, or maybe arguments against the way I handle things. So I'd like to start out with a few things that have helped me out. Um, First of all, I would recommend to standardize your lift. If you don't perform an exercise in the same way again and again, then you're not going to be able to make progress over time. It's very important to have a program that allows you to make progress over time. So if there is an exercise that you can't perform for whatever reason, like you can't reach depth on a squat, then you might just improve your technique on the squat with a low weight and use other exercises for strength, like a leg press. Another thing is to warm up for your exercises. You could do this with a lighter weight before working up to your heavier weights. This is a no-brainer, of course. And of course, your first exercise is going to need more warm-up sets than the following exercises. Say you start with a compound movement like the squat, you're going to want to do more warm-up sets than you would for the leg curl that you're doing after this exercise. Another rule that I stick to is always using a full range of motion. Doing partials in the gym is not going to really help you unless you're doing things like a bicep 21s, if you know what those are. It's where you do part of the lift for 7 reps, then do say like the lower part of the rep. You do the upper part of the rep for the consecutive 7 reps, and then at the last 7 reps you'll do like a full range of motion. Sure, that can work, but I would aim for a full range of motion most of the time. Another thing is the rep range that you use when aiming for hypertrophy. I would stick with a rep range from like 8 to 12 reps. Going above and beyond and doing like 15 reps or more, I would consider that cardio. I wouldn't say that it doesn't have a place in your training regime, but it's not the most efficient way to build muscle. For strength, you're probably better off doing a lower rep range. Like you might do a single rep, or you might do a set of up to like 5 reps for strength. Of course, I think it's best to do like some sort of periodization where you have a time period of say 8 weeks or 12 or 6 or whatever, where you focus on this mid-range set length, followed by a cycle where you have a lower rep range and so forth. It's also important not to neglect the eccentric and the concentric part of the exercise. You want to make sure that you're controlling the weight at all times. This also helps to standardize your lifts. In general, I would do like 2, maybe 3 sets per exercise. It's been shown that if you do more sets per exercise, those additional sets are not really going to contribute much more. This applies most of all to the mid-range set length. So say you're doing singles, say you're doing heavy squats, doing just 1 rep, you could do more sets than those 2 or 3. So it's really, you have to keep the total volume in mind that you're doing here. Yeah, don't turn your workouts into a cardio session by doing too many reps. And also don't work out for too long. You don't want to spend too much time in the gym because at some point you're out of nutrients and you're gonna want to refuel. So I would say maybe aim for a workout that lasts an hour, no more than that. Also, I would suggest getting close to failure, but not actually going to failure. So I would mostly leave like 1 or 2 reps left in the tank. And this is especially important for heavier exercises like the squat. Because if you don't do this, then you might get fatigued and you might not be recovered in time for your next workout. Also, I think frequency matters. So I would suggest training all your muscles at least 2 times a week. Never do more than you can recover from. Because if you can't recover from your workouts, it's going to hinder the progressive overload that you're aiming for. Also, you wanna stretch a lot. I would suggest. I personally like stretching at night before going to bed. I feel like I wake up more flexible. You don't want to overdo stretching in the gym. I would just make sure that you stretch enough so that you can perform your exercises in a profound way. And I would fuel your workouts well. Training fasted is great for increasing NAD levels, but it's not ideal for increasing muscle mass. So I would suggest taking at least some protein and carbohydrates before training. Okay, I need to let my dog out. Just a sec.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I would also focus on making progress over time. That's the most important thing. So pick your exercises and try and stick to them for at least 6 weeks. You can make progress by either increasing the weight each workout. You can also increase the time of your lift so that your lift actually takes longer in the descent or the ascent, doesn't matter. You can decrease your resting time. You can increase your rep range, or you can increase the amount of sets performed. When you're reaching a plateau on, say, the bench press, you want to find out why you're not progressing on the exercise. What is the weak point here? Is it your shitty diet? Is it your lack of sleep? Or is it a weak point in your lift that you can improve? So you can find out by looking at where your sticking point is in this lift, or see if there are any flaws in your form. So say, for example, I've had some trouble with the lockout on my bench press. So my struggle point is, I can show you, it's like right there is my struggle point when I'm getting back up. So it's a bit it's kind of on the point where you would start a floor press. So to increase my bench press, I've been doing floor presses, and I'm hoping to hit a goal that I have in mind for September. So let's see where this takes me. So yeah, you can pick accessory exercises to improve your main lifts to avoid to overcome a plateau. And then there are some common mistakes in the gym that I see people doing a lot. Mostly it's there's a myth going around that you should shock your body to stimulate muscle growth, which is not really a good idea, because doing so will hinder your progress over time. It's gonna give you that stimulus for that day, sure, but if you keep shocking your body like that, your body is never going to adapt to the exercise that you're doing. And last but not least, supplements. I'm not too fond of using supplements like pre-workouts. And I believe the best pre-workout supplement there is Himalaya salt. Just you need electrolytes to perform in a gym. And of course, Himalaya salt wins because there's less microplastics and heavy metals in them than in, say, sea salt. Another product that I like to use before heavy workouts is beet juice because of its betaine content and its nitric oxide content. And I'll use creatine after the gym, but it doesn't really matter so much when you take the creatine as long as you're taking the creatine in general. So yeah, those are my most important rules when it comes to gaining muscle.
Cool.
And
Thank you
yeah.
for sharing that, Wouter. I appreciate it. And there are a lot of interesting points in there. And I gotta say also a lot of things that I don't think are clear cut and some that are quite variable depending on one's goals and one's equipment and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But yeah, like this is some good initial things to strive for. So one thing that I see a bit different is about the rep range, because
Mhm.
the most important thing about muscle synthesis and stimulating muscle growth is to basically exhaust your muscles so you push them to grow. Because if they aren't
Mhm.
exhausted, then they won't grow. That's basically how it
Mhm.
works. So
Yeah.
you basically break them down
Yeah.
in order for them to grow. So that's the most important thing. And that actually means that you don't have to do a few amount of reps to make that happen. You can do a high amount of reps. It's just about exhausting them. And and of course there are indeed different ranges that will affect various stimulus in different ways. So as you mentioned about like say strength, hypertrophy, hypertrophy, what is it called? Um, hypa, like muscle growth, and like more like cardio like building more stamina and stuff like that. But again, like it really comes down to being able to really exhaust your muscles. So the thing is that like so one thing that I have recently gotten like started doing myself and also been learning quite a bit about over the last few years is blood flow restriction training, and I'm doing that like using the Kaatsu equipment, which is probably the most famous and most studied um, equipment to use for that. And here, you basically like you put some bands on your body, so either on your legs or on your arms, and then you basically the bands basically are like there's like being blown air into like the band, so they basically push on the muscles. So that then means that like your muscles will already be like stimulated automatically just like having them on, which means that you already got pressure from that, and thus you need a lot less weight to actually be able to like stimulate muscle growth, as well as like the fact that like you you can do a lot less weight because you already get that pressure from the bands itself. And in that type of training, you actually tend to go for around like 20 to 30 reps per set. And this is also about also reducing injury frequency as well. So by increasing reps, by lowering weights, you dramatically decrease the chance of getting injured as well. And by having that constant pressure, as well as getting the weight lifted with those, you basically get this like huge stimulus, which is very, very efficient. And that means that you can actually also perform these workouts in a really short manner. So like for me, like I basically do the over body in about 15 to 20 minutes, and the same for the lower body. So it's basically like half an hour to like 40 minutes in total, and that's extremely effective to stimulate that. And you have like the amazing benefit of radically reducing injury, and you get that muscle stimulus without having to do a really high weight amounts. So that's a really cool thing to go for. And again, like yeah, even doing something like body weight exercises, even that can also lead to actually good muscle growth. And of course, like the more pressure you again induce, the more you're gonna get out of it. So like say if you do like 50 or 60 push-ups, you likely won't get as much muscle growth as if you're able to do do fewer with a higher pressure. So that also means that like by doing body weight exercises, you're also able to add pressure yourself. So by even just a thing of like actually tightening the muscles that are actually working. So for instance, doing like a push-up by tightening like your arms, your back, and your chest, then you get a lot more pressure, as well as also slowing down. This is another way to also get a lot more pressure, because that really forces that makes it a lot harder to do as a lot of additional pressure. So like that means that if you do those combined, you're really slow, a lot of pressure by really like putting like actually forcing or like yeah pressuring your muscles you're actually using, then you might be able to like do say 10 or 20 or something reps instead of say 50 or 60, how many you could do without it. It's also an interesting thing. So again, like the whole thing comes really down to like really exhausting the muscles. And here like I get your point about like so leaving something in the tank. And here I do think more about the fact that um this like this kind of depends on how often you work out a given muscle group per week. So if you do one only like once a week or something, then you will probably like have a lot of like um pain in your muscles for days following, because you're just not adding a lot of pressure during the week, and you're like your muscle isn't really that like accustomed to actually being like or getting that pressure. But if I actually do several times a week, then your muscles are able to tolerate a lot more, and then you actually get a lot less pain. So that's the same with like things like people really like tend to hate working out their legs because it tends to be a lot more boring and stuff like that. But if you actually train them more than just like once a week, which most people do because it just like hate to do it, then you actually get a lot less pain as well. So if you're able to do it consistently several times a week, a given muscle group, and actually go to failure, then you can actually get um, better muscle growth outcomes than like doing it less and not going to failure. But if you're not able to do it more than say maybe once or maybe twice a week, and you then will get like a lot of muscle pains by going to failure all the time, then I understand that like you might need to do less, but ideally you would actually be able to do it several times a week and then going to failure every single time, unless you do have a lot of pain, which could also be caused by say you have a break from working out, you come back to it, then initially you probably have pain for days following because your muscles aren't accustomed to that. But otherwise, it would be ideal to repressure them as much as possible without getting to severe pain.
Okay, so yeah, these are some good points, and I'm gonna reply on these after I open the door for my dog. So just a sec.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. But as I'll also try to like allude to in this thing is also that these things they do vary on a lot of different factors, which means that like having rules for working out and stuff, it can be difficult because your body's going to change and shift with stressors and all kinds of things over time, which is going to shift how much you're able to do. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, the Kaatsu training or blood flow restricted training is a great proven method to gain muscle. And I think it was Mike Menzer, a pro bodybuilder, I think the 70s, who kind of popularized this training method. But then most bodybuilders who tried it out, they went to another like they went to a more to another training method with more volume and a higher training frequency. But there have been some like Dorian Yates, I believe, was also very much into this high intensity training. Um, but yeah, I think it might not be ideal for everyone. I think you should always do what you can recover from. And if I were to do heavy squats and I would go to failure on those on each set, then that would hinder my gains because I would not be able to recover from it and do another leg workout in a few days. So this would ruin the volume and the frequency that I can achieve in my workouts. So yeah, it's effective. It works, but I'm not sure if it's the most effective method to gain muscle. And I do believe that sticking with this mid-range is important for hypertrophy, more so than doing high rep ranges. And I like to just look at athletes when I'm thinking of this. And if you look at like long distance runners versus short distance runners, they're both uh, absolutely exhausting their muscles, but in a different way. And you can see this in their physiques. So yeah, Katsu, it works, but I'm not sure if going to failure is the best because you might be giving up some training volume and frequency.
Yes, so the thing like about like lower high rep that the point is basically about like that it depends on the pressure that you have in each rep. If you have really low pressure, then you would have to do like insane amounts of reps to get like to exhaustion. So for
Mm-hmm.
instance, like doing long distance running, you're basically adding like almost no pressure per step, whereas like low distance running, then you're adding a ton of pressure per step. So like
Yeah.
of course like if you get to like a certain degree, you get to like 100 reps, 50 reps, something insane like 200 reps, then like it's probably difficult to get the same gain because you're adding like so little pressure per rep. Um, so it's just kind of more the fact that like the pressure determines a lot about um, how much each rep kind of provides you with, and the thing um, about so like going to failure or not. So as I also like mentioned with the fact that like it depends on how many times you work out each muscle group per week. So if you do it several times a week, you're able to tolerate a lot more than if you did fewer times a week, which means that you're able to go to failure because your muscles are accustomed to it. But if your muscles are not accustomed to it, you're gonna have a ton of pain from doing that all the time, or from doing that say suddenly out of nowhere. So if you actually like accustom your muscles to actually be able to tolerate working out several times a week, same muscle group, then heading to failure for those, you're actually not gonna have that pain anymore. And like it's also something that like I and many I know have also experienced several times. Like so, for instance, if you also like come back from not working out for a while in the gym, and then you come back, and then initially you have a lot of pain, and then we actually add up the intensity again, build it out, and able to tolerate a lot more, and then you can go to fill. You can go several times a week and all that, and it's gonna be no issue. So it's just about basically accustoming your muscles to be able to tolerate what you want to do. So depending on how many times you want to work out per week. So like
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course people can choose what they want to do. I'm just saying that like if people actually basically train their muscles to tolerate more, then they also can over time. It's a process of getting there.
Yeah. So I'm not too sure about this because if I am to try hit a PR on the squat or the deadlift, then I'm done for the next day. So I think this is best left for isolation exercises that you can actually more easily perform with blood restricted training. Another thing I wanted to add about going to failure is that it might not be ideal to do this on heavy exercises like the squat and the deadlift every week, because I feel exhausted afterwards and I'll need a few days to recover from that. So I think it's best left for competitions and isolation exercises. What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, so like as you also mentioned, like about the fact that like if you're heading for say a PR or something, then of course you're gonna use a huge amount of weight and like a weight that you're probably not really like comfortable using properly. So you might like if you go to failure on that like extremely heavy weight, you might probably increase your chances of getting injured because you have like this weight that you hardly can tolerate. So like say if you're doing like a PR and like you can do maybe like 1.5 or like say 2 and you head for that because it's going to failure and you probably increase your chance of injury because like it's a weight that your body just pretty much can't handle. So of course, like in that case, heading for a PR, then it does make it a lot less safer to going to failure because you're like on the edge. You're just like losing, maybe like you're holding like say a dumbbell and just like you can't even hold it. Just like you drop it and it could go really bad. So in that case, yeah, I totally agree. So in terms of like say isolation exercises and all that, so like for me, I actually only do compound exercises because it's a lot more efficient to do and they stimulate a lot more growth and it's just a lot better to do overall. Unless you like are heading say you're bodybuilding or something and you want to target a specific muscle group and you want to increase a specific part of your body, but if you want to like basically increase the size of your overall body, muscles overall, then compound exercises are a lot better to go for. So and in terms of the compound, like I'm not aware of any research or any knowledge that would make it like too much to go for failure on those, whether it's Kaatsu or not. It's just again, it's just about like the the amount that your muscles are accustomed to doing over time. So it's the same like if you do cardio, like if you just start by just sprinting for like 2 kilometers or something and you haven't sprinted for a year or something, then of course like you're gonna damage your body completely because it's not accustomed to that at all. So it's the same with weights that you basically want to gradually increase, and then as your body can tolerate more, you can do more without having um that like part where you just like everything hurts and all that. So it's really about like um
I think,
thinking about where your body is at and
yeah,
then going from there.
I think what it all comes down to is just don't do more than what you can recover from. And it would be
Yeah.
nice to see some studies comparing going to failure versus not going to failure. Yeah, maybe we'll learn more about that in the next coming years.
Yes, and the thing is also that like so no matter what you choose to do, like no matter what program you choose to follow, there'll be times where you're able to do more and less, and that's totally normal because again, your whole body shifts over time. There are gonna be so many stresses, so many things that are gonna change how much you're able to cope with.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
also means that like you shouldn't just do like the same program all the time, like no matter how you feel, no matter how much pain you have, like whatever's going on, because like sometimes you can do more, sometimes you can do less. So even if you say scheduled to do a given muscle group, say 3 times a week, and you're really like your body just isn't able to deal with it at this moment, then it's better to wait an additional 2 days for that muscle group because then listening to your body and you're then radically reducing injury as well as like also if you then you're basically overtraining and then you also just increase your ability to get like infections and all diseases and stuff. So listen to your body is a really good step. And if you want to do more, and gradually increase, but really listen to your body and not overdo it. That's really important.
Oh yeah, definitely. Don't overdo it. That's bad for your immune system. Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So should we end this part here, and then we can cover
Yeah,
more in the future?
let's round this up and go more in depth or talk about nutrition and sports in the next video. All right.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next time, Andreas.
Thank you. It was a pleasure and some great points, and looking forward to dive deeper into these very important topics. Have a great day.
Yeah, you
And
too.
thank you everyone for watching.
Ciao.
Bye.